to deliver supplies to more than 1 million Siberians before their long winter begins. Aid is needed because extensive flooding has destroyed homes and crops, as Mark Webster reports.
Struggling to get aid through to remote parts of Russia during the brief summer months, these Red Cross parcels have come 3,000 miles by rail and ship from Moscow. For more than 6 months of the year, even this huge river is icebound as temperatures plunge to minus 50 degrees. Most of the 200 tons of aid has been paid for by the British government, but the Red Cross fears in the future other areas will get priority.
It certainly is going to be difficult for us to meet our targets to run the programs that we'd like to run in Russia next winter and winters beyond that, because certainly lots of money will flow to reconstruct Kosovo, and it'll make the challenge for Russian Red Cross and for the International Red Cross work in Russia much more difficult.
5 hours upriver by barge, the Red Cross supplies are also going to 50,000 villagers whose homes were flooded by melting ice. The goods are unloaded for 6 settlements whose crops were largely destroyed. Many Russians bitterly resent the fact that their once powerful country needs this kind of aid at all. Indeed, though this year's harvest could again be catastrophically bad, there is food. All of this was purchased in Russia. But since the country's economic collapse, the fact is millions of Russians simply can't afford to buy it themselves. While Western aid is gratefully unloaded here, the charities know they can only tackle a tiny part of the problem. With no signs yet of a recovery in the Russian domestic economy, millions of other Russians won't be so lucky. Mark Webster, ITN, Yakutia.
3 students are attempting to recreate the experience of Neil Armstrong's Apollo 11 moon flight by using a car. To get an idea of what the real astronauts went through 30 years ago, the car was sealed in an isolation bubble at London's Science Museum. The students are allowed out once a day for a hygiene break. Icelandic pop star Bjork's latest video has caused a storm in the fast-moving world of computer graphics. It's being hailed as a sensation because of its innovative 3D special effects. The video was put together in London, which is home to some of the world's most creative post-production companies and the centre of the pop promo industry. Here's Annabelle Roberts.
The androids featured in this promo are a combination of real and computer-generated images. The fiberglass body was filmed in a studio. The eyes, nose and mouth are real. They belong to Bjork, who was filmed separately in the same position as the models. The arms, hands and neck are 3D images created by a computer, as are the robotic arms which assemble the androids.
This one, I think, is my favourite scene because it's got a bit of everything in it. What happened here was there was 2 robots that were filmed, and neither of them could move because they weren't animatronic, they were just models, you know, like Airfix models. And basically we had to add a moving head and a moving arm, and also these 2 moving robotic arms down here. And so there's an awful lot of elements in that shot, and as you can see, they're all moving in very subtle ways. And I also had to match, this is what Bjork's arm was doing. She was actually kneeling here. In another shot that we had, she was kneeling here and she was kissing this robot on the set. And I had to match what she was doing. And then Bjork's eyes and her mouth were pasted on top of the 3D image.
The cost of making this video is a well-kept secret, but many music promos run into 6 figures. This one was in post-production for 2 months. Those who worked on it had to build the images, animate them, add colour and introduce 7 different levels of light and shade.
The first stage is to build all the objects that you're going to need to use, and in this case it was 3 main things. It was the head, Bjork's head, and her robotic neck, and then the arms for the Bjork robots, and also some extra robotic arms. And once these objects are built, they exist in a sort of 3-dimensional world inside the computer, and that means you can look at them from any angle, and you can also animate them. The hardest thing was matching the way things looked. There was lots of flickering of light going on. That's quite difficult to match. And obviously, if anything isn't quite right, you'll notice. You can sort of see towards the end, for these shots here, there's an awful lot of light flickering going on. And of course, all these elements that are moving here, they're all 3D, and the lights had to flicker on them as well, otherwise they wouldn't blend in. And that was a lot of work.
But the hard work has won acclaim from industry experts.
It actually was one of the few things I've seen recently that I didn't know how they'd done it. And I think, like a lot of things, you can get very sort of jaundiced by things you see. And that, as I say, it was just incredible to see that technology being used in that way. It was the combination of 3D computer modelling, live action footage, motion control rigs where the camera's actually tracked, and also the fact that Bjork's face was incorporated onto the 3D geometry, and it looked like her, and it wasn't some sort of amorphous robot figure. You actually knew who it was.
Back in the 60s, this was the heart of swinging London, a centre of culture and fashion. Today, we're living in the era of Cool Britannia, and British culture is said once again to be thriving. And from this position of strength, creative talent is being keenly sought by the international market.
Overseas directors can today find much of this talent close to Carnaby Street in Soho.
In the television industry and high-end post-production television industry, London is more or less second to none with regards to promos and advertising. It's competing on a day-to-day basis with the LA markets and with Paris market. London offers a fantastic cultural background in music development, and its ability to constantly come up with new music genres and music fashions, and its history steeped in music production makes it an obvious centre for, certainly for record companies and for discovering new bands, etc. And I think to a certain extent that our industry very much benefits from that, as well as the fact that post-production companies here in London are of a very high quality, particularly in television post-production techniques.
Much of the expertise has been directed into special effects for ads and pop videos, but a new market is opening up.
A lot of post-production companies who traditionally did film and TV work are now looking at multimedia and the games industry as areas where they can expand their skill set. And also, because multimedia and the games industries are now maturing, they're starting to look at sort of more professional ways of doing things. And I think you look, certainly with things like the new PlayStation coming out, you'll see far more, I guess, film-like effects within games, and also games that look like proper animation rather than sort of little blocky figures running around.
Technological advances are pushing back the creative frontiers for graphic designers. The challenge now is to embrace new markets and new media.
Annabelle Roberts with that report. Scotland is